Any Spain?
No. Costa Rica.
Oh, are we going over your exploits and travel?
So that's how I've just maintained it over the years,
Done that
just
Spanish?
traveling. Yeah.
My daughter
that's
is medical attorney.
Are we ready?
It's
So,
really,
I'd like to call the meeting to order. We do have a
What?
quorum now.
There's a meeting?
all right, I suppose.
Tonight we have a full agenda, even though we don't have a full table. We'll start with public comments, commissioner comments. We're going to review and approve our minutes from last month. We have an introduction of our new police chief. I'm excited to hear from him and work with him in the future. And then we're going to go into a review of our work plan. That's also in your packet toward the back, and it's got the Excel embed in it, so you can take a look at that. Each of us are going to talk about our 3 greatest accomplishments while working on our last plan and our challenges, and then we will continue in the 2019 issues. So this time we don't have any public comment. We'll move into commissioner comments. We'll start to my right here.
Hello. This is a bit of a bittersweet meeting for me, as this is actually my last meeting on the Police Commission. As you all know, I'm the Human Rights Commission liaison, and my term is expiring on June 30th on the Human Rights Commission, and I am not seeking reappointment. And at our meeting in May, we'll be filling my replacement for this commission. And so I'm really sad to be leaving, actually. It's been a blast, and I love the work this commission's done. And I'm excited to be here to contribute for one final push. But you will have a new face. I don't know who it is yet. I have a couple people in mind who I've been talking with and who I think will do a great job in my stead. But this is my last one.
I'm looking forward to having a coffee with you at some time.
Yeah, that'd be great.
If we can. And glad to be here. That's it.
Oh, the department seems to be re-energized a little bit here. The waiting period's over, and we're all, from everything we learned and a lot of conversations that we'd had amongst each other and with Chief Skinner, we're very excited that he's here. So the department's happy and welcome aboard.
Thanks. Echo the sentiment that's already been said. It's great to have you aboard. I attended many of the things leading up, so I'm excited to introduce myself as well and talk to you more. Great. Thanks, Sean.
And ditto, pretty much.
Thank you.
So I'm new to the table. Carter and I have been talking for the last few months about whether or not it would be appropriate or more helpful for the commission if I sat at the table. Considering a lot of what the police commission does is what my job is daily, and I oftentimes would have little bits of input into things that might be helpful, but since I'm sitting in the back of the room, I don't shout across the room. So I think the opening and closing comments will give me an opportunity to be able to provide you guys a little thumbnail sketch of kind of more of an update on what I'm doing, which you normally don't get because I usually just get called up for specific policy review. And we talked about it at the last planning meeting with Bill and Scott, and they were supportive of the idea, and so we figured we'd give it a shot and see what happens. So happy to be up here and hopefully be able to help and provide a little more insight here and there and a little more updating on kind of what I've got going on in my office.
Okay. Well, welcome, Chief Skinner. We're glad you're here. But also, and I was talking with Scott about this a little while ago, I'd like us to consider whether we would like to send some kind of comments to the Budget Committee concerning public safety. I think they'd probably be interested in this commission's, I would be interested in this commission's opinion, so I think everyone on the committee would. So I think we should consider that. Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry to see Edward go. I'm pleased to have you at the table. I think it's great. I'm excited about your new presence. I want to report that Scott and I actually went to the meeting of the Southeast Neighborhood Association on May 3rd. It was fairly well attended, I think. We were well received. We made a little presentation about what the commission is and what it's composed of and what our main activity seems to be. And to my pleasure, there were quite a few questions, and there were good questions. And does that sound about right?
Very good questions.
They were. And so it's sort of validating to me for this effort we're making to connect with neighborhood associations, at least in this one instance. I have another bee in my bonnet that I'd like to just mention, and that's that in my ramblings around Eugene, I see, to me, a surprising number of people on their cell phones while they're driving.
Yeah.
And I wish there could be some kind of understood practice. What comes to my mind is everybody honks their horn. You know, when somebody is seen to. I've tried this on my own, trying to create a practice, and I come perilously close to creating road rage.
Yes.
Some big burly people that, you know, and I don't want to do that alone. I don't mind if a whole bunch of us create. So I don't know how little cultural things like that can get created, but it seems to me it would be a positive thing if the public at large had this sense that you don't tolerate cell phone use in cars. So I put it out there.
Thank you. Chief Skinner, we normally ask you if you have some comments, but we have you on the agenda.
Yeah, I was going to
Just
just
a
wait for my
minute,
time, yeah.
so,
That's fine, thank you.
So we've been pretty busy this last month. I think we've had about 4 different meetings on both the public outreach and then also with Jeremy and Sarah Williams to get things set up for this next year. Learned a lot, and I learned that the community does want to talk with us and share their views and ask questions, and they want explanations. And it went from just, hi, I'm Scott, and Will, and it went into a Q&A, and it was very, very exciting to see that level of engagement.
Yeah.
So one area that we ran into with the public outreach is having timely social media posts, if we're using the city to do that, is that we, and it might be something we talk about later on in tonight's work plan, how do we want to do that if we want to have a timely social media post and we're not all here to vote on it? So I look at maybe some solutions to that tonight. The budget, the budget committee met last night. There were 2 items that I saw on there that directly impacted the police department. That was an overhire for 2 officers so that we could hire ahead, and then that money is just to pay so while we're understaffed, and then it goes away. And then also $80,000 for data storage for the body cams that we talked about. So those 2 items are on there. There was a robust discussion, and I believe there will be more to come concerning that. There's a couple council workshops that impact some of the work that we do that I encourage everyone to watch, either on the webcam or attend in person or review before our next few meetings. They're on May 14th and 16th, and they involve the community justice, public safety. The Budget Committee meets on May 16th, 23rd, and 30th. They're at 5:30 at the library. That's it. So we'll move into approving last month's minutes. Are there any edits or comments? Have a motion.
I'll move.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. I'm very excited to announce our new chief here and give him the floor.
Thanks,
Thank
Scott, I
you.
appreciate it. So, thanks for an opportunity to introduce myself a little bit. I had a great conversation with Jeremy, kind of having an overview, and as you can imagine, coming in here, there's a lot of systems in place in Eugene in general, but within the Eugene Police Department that are important for me to understand, and understand how they're interconnected in a bigger system and what we're trying to accomplish when it comes to a variety of things. And one of those things is accountability and transparency and openness with the public. And so I had a chance to sit through a citizen review board it was on Tuesday, I believe. And then last night was a budget meeting, and then tonight's the police commission. So that 3-night stretch for me has been very informative and been really good for me to see how they have kind of touch points with each other. And so I'm excited to continue to do that. I appreciate the work this group does. oftentimes in police departments, we're so close to what we do and so close to the problem that sometimes it's hard to see the bigger picture. And so I think this group has a tremendous opportunity to be able to step back and be objective when sometimes we lose a little bit of objectivity when we live in the world that we live in the world every single day that we serve in. And so I think there's some opportunity to be able to look at how we move the organization forward with, especially with the evaluation of good, thoughtful policies that govern what we do. And so I think that's a tremendous opportunity. I'm really encouraged by the dialogue that I'm hearing around community justice and what that means for this community. I appreciate the thoughtful kind of 360-degree approach that we're taking with regards to all layers of the justice system, to include community court, municipal court, our PSAP 911 center, and the police department, and some of the things that we do. I've been, as you can imagine, fully engaged in that dialogue, and people are starting to ask for, from your perspective, being new, what do you see? What do you think? What are the things that you're starting to see that are starting to either resonate with you or become thematic with respect to what we need to do? And I'll look forward to delivering some information to the city council and maybe even at the budget committee if asked to, that talks a little bit about some opportunities that we have in the future. The piece that I think that is also not only encouraging, but equally I want to be cautious about and tempered about is the expectations that we set. The expectations that if somehow this city decides to throw some amount of money at the problem, that we are very quickly going to be able to ramp up and solve that problem. And we need to be tempered and understand that when it comes to staff, especially our sworn staff, that there is an 18-month gap that occurs before we can get people hired and actually doing what they're doing. So we're looking at some opportunities to maybe do some things that are in the shorter term that feel like we can make some difference in the not so distant future, but then maybe offer an opportunity for kind of a tempered, tiered, and stepped approach to where we want to be over the course of the next several years. And so I want to be sensitive to the fact that while we have the good momentum and we're talking about the great things that we could be doing, we also need to have a plan that's attainable and that's responsible and accountable. And we need to have that conversation. The majority of the conversations I'm having around this particular initiative is starting it with the concept of what aren't we able to do that we should be able to do in a community this size. What are the things that we should be doing in our neighborhoods and in the downtown core that we can't do, that we should be able to do in this size? And so as we build something, it will be built around outcomes. It'll be built around if we invest in X, this is what we can expect to get out of it. So that when we come to council and or the budget committee, it's just not a number of bodies, and trust me, I'll take care of it. It'll be more of a programmatic approach to what we want to accomplish. Some of that will come with questions that we need to ask, and I think this commission, as a representative of the community, as well as council as a representative of the community, there's some tough questions we need to ask and answer for ourselves. Like for instance, is it the expectation in this community that all the calls for service will be answered? And if the answer to that is yes, then we need to talk about how we get there. Those are some of the questions that we're going to be trying to ask and answer as we build these investment packages and talk a little bit about what we want to do. So overall, I'm really excited about the organization. You've got, as you know, you've got a tremendous foundation of excellent staff members that care deeply about this community, that take it very personal when things are going sideways, and are very attentive. I have oftentimes been in the community, even the last 2 weeks that I've been here, almost 2 weeks I've been here, where people come up and say to me, thank you for what you do, we support you, those types of things. The relationship that we build with the community, oftentimes we have a tendency to put our best forward and try and build that relationship with them. The piece of this that I'm going to continue to ask the community to do is, in any relationship, it is effort on both sides. And that I ask the community to come and want to be in relationship with us and be able to do that. Because if I went to our EPD officers one by one and asked them, do you think this community supports you? I'm not sure it's as a resounding of a yes as it should be, or that it is. Because I'm not sure they hear that very often. I'm not sure they hear from the community members very often, so I'm very quick to ask them to, I thank them for their comments, but then say, find one of those guys or gals that doesn't have anything on their collar and tell them thank you for what they do in the community, because I think there's an opportunity there to build trust both ways, and so we'll work hard on what that relationship looks like. So I think we're in good shape with respect to the direction we're going. We certainly have some resource constraints. I certainly think this community deserves a greater level of responsiveness. I think they deserve a greater level of creativity and innovation in what 21st century policing looks like. We just need to talk about how we reasonably get there with some additional resources, because I think in my early stage of looking is that we are as lean of an organization as I've ever been a part of when it comes to delivering police services. And so we are at that tipping point and at a good stage to have a discussion on what we look like as we move forward. So thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next is our review of our work plan and 2018 accomplishments. So in your packet, you have that Excel that's been added in the blue. It's really been divided into different categories here. So policies that reflect community values, resources, issues related to preferred policing alternatives, increased communication between the community and police, and decreased misunderstanding regarding the nature of adopted police policies, and finally assist City Council in balancing priorities, resources by advising on police resource issues. So in those areas, you'll see check marks off to the left. Those are things that we've either reviewed and completed, and then those that do not have the check marks are not complete, or there may be components that we've begun to work on but haven't finished. Any questions on what the chart looks like? Does it look like what we've been working on the last year? That's good. Okay, so what I'd like to do is ask some questions. So what are the 3 greatest accomplishments you think that have come from this work plan? And then 3 of the biggest challenges, and I want to go around the table this time to the left, starting with Will. And if you have 3, if you have 2, whatever it is, your thoughts, comments, we'll just open it up. At the end of going around the table, then I'll open up a queue, acknowledge it, and you can comment on anything that any of the commissioners have said.
Well, I was impressed with our work on the code of conduct and on the start from scratch drone policy. And I was also impressed with the de-escalation discussion and the policy on that. So I guess those would be my 3, at least right now, top ones.
Challenges?
Is that all you want? Oh, challenges. Well, I would like it if there were more attendance by the public at these meetings and more for sort of input at the start of these meetings. I'm sure most of the public out there doesn't know that there's an opportunity like that. Would never occur to them. As I would not have known before I came here. So there might be some way of informing public at large that there's this thing you could do. I do think people would have things to say, both complaints and sort of positive suggestions. I know that there's been work done on communication between the commission and the city council and the mayor and so on, but I haven't sort of witnessed that myself. So I think there could be more, perhaps, sharing of what's going on from the people who've done that work with the rest of, with me. So I'd just like to have the sense that that's going on. And also, I think it'd be nice if we got more feedback from the city council specifically. just the part that's relevant to us, but I assume there are parts that would be relevant to us. I would just like to have a kind of flow of information back and forth between us and council. That's all I have right at this moment.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I am new, so I did not get to participate in all of the accomplishments that you guys have done, and they're very impressive. So I think I'm going to talk about things that I see that might be difficult. I agree with Will. I think outreach and getting people in the community to understand what this group does is going to be a challenge. It's hard to get people's attention. I also think number 17 is going to be somewhat of a challenge, accessing what the public wants from its police, because I think there's going to be more variation than we might expect in what people actually want from their police. I think you think everyone would want the same thing, but I think when you start doing a deep dive, you find out, well, you guys probably know this, maybe not, I don't know. I think that's going to be interesting, but...
Not sure there's any expectation that it's the same from anybody.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay.
Certainly, the three policy topics that created the most robust and interesting conversation, useful conversation, were certainly the code of conduct, which now that we have a permanent chief in place, we're meeting tomorrow and we're going to talk about that. You don't know it yet, but I'll get you briefed up on the code of conduct. And that has stalled out a bit in the senior staff review phase with all the stuff that's been happening. So I'm hoping to get that revved back up again. From there, the use of force, de-escalation, armed barricaded subjects, kind of that package of discussion was robust and very helpful. And then, of course, the UAS drone policy was another fantastic accomplishment for this body to come together and pretty quickly be able to pull together an approved policy for us. Challenges, I would echo what the other two here have said already, that more public input would be better. It's kind of a funny dynamic, and we talked about it at the planning meeting that, and I've talked about it with Jeremy and Carter over the last 2 years of being in here. We lean on you all as our public input. You are the public input for us. And I think it's also sometimes hard for the commission members to look at it from that way, that you are the public to us. But then figuring out how you can bring this out to your public, to your circles, and then to the public in general. That it's a funny way to look at it. That I don't know if you all have even really considered that, but to us, that is you, and that's what you represent, and that's why we value your opinion so highly. In when we do these policy reviews, I think that's all I've got.
And I would say the use of force, de-escalation, the drone policy, and the code of conduct were, as he said, robust discussions and came up with what seemed to be very acceptable and approved policies. And the same with the challenges. I think when he mentions, and I have reminded myself that's why I'm here. I'm to represent the public. So. But I think the balance will be a little bit more public when we go to these public meetings, if we do a little of that outreach, then my opinion as a member of the public is bolstered by more input, so that's always a good thing. And I think we'll see, isn't June's meeting going to be somewhere else, if I'm right? So who knows? We'll see, because I do think this would be a very intimidating place for most people to come. It's not handy in terms of bus routes or whatever, as it would be if we met downtown somewhere. So we'll see if that makes a substantial difference when we meet with the public, or when we meet closer to downtown. Might be helpful. So.
I am also pretty new, but coming into this, Lucy briefed me on what it would be, and she was very much, you are the voice of the public, that's one of your responsibilities. Going both ways, taking stuff from here, going to groups, and bringing what those groups and community interests say back to the commission. What I've heard from a variety of folks is that the de-escalation and the bias training have been very successful and, increasing trust between various folks. It's being able to say, like, yeah, they put together puzzles, some of them have oven mitts, like, it's a fun story to tell, and it's a really useful way to, explain what's going on. As far as struggles, I think this is going to be going forward, but resources, obviously. And I would like to see a public question or comment section at the end of meetings, not just at the beginning, because we discuss a lot of things, and a lot of folks are going to come in here not knowing anything, and then they'll have questions afterwards, and don't want to necessarily force them to come to another meeting when they've got busy schedules in order to ask those.
It's an interesting and unique spot for me to be selected to sit at the table with you all. For that reason, I think the most positive, most impactful thing that's came out of these conversations, and it may have happened regardless, but I think the fact that there are a couple city councilors that sit here with us, excuse me, that sit here with us, and David James's presentation about staffing levels was huge, and the fact that kind of at least got the conversation started amongst you all that really had no idea. It seemed like most folks didn't understand where we were at as a department, and so that was huge for me to be able to be kind of a part of that. And I don't speak up a whole lot at the table, but that was really important for you guys to hear, and I think that had an effect. And hopefully, moving forward with the budget committee, that it continues to get the support that it needs, which I guess rolls into a challenge as well that we all kind of face. And I think I echo what Sergeant Williams said, that you guys are the nexus to the community for us. And I've always said that I enjoy my conversations with community members that have a negative outlook on the police far more than I do with ones that have positive outlooks, because those are moments that we have to change people's opinions and give them that different perspective. And as cliche as it is to humanize the badge a little bit, and I'd say that's a great challenge to try to get more community members involved. It's real easy to complain and sit around and do nothing though. Yeah. And so you guys are folks that are at the table, and we appreciate that you guys are, and you guys are in contact with some people that do have negative interactions, and so I think getting those people in the room, or at least having conversations, would be great.
If I could have $1 every time I get somebody bristling at me when I tell them I'm a police commissioner, we would have our budget just hammered in. Yeah. So I think the de-escalation piece was key. It was an important part of the work that Chief Kearns had implemented, and I think that moving forward, I've been proud to be a part of this commission because of the work that I've seen the police commission do and the work that the department does. Echoing what everybody else has said, when I do mention that I'm a police commissioner, there's always two different reactions. There's an immediate bristling. People get really upset and, well, I didn't know you were paid by the police department. Well, I'm not paid. But it's also an opportunity to reach out to them, to give them a better understanding of where the department is. I have on a number of occasions said, we're not dealing with the same issues here as they are in Los Angeles, Seattle, New York. Some of the places that you hear, some of the departments that are dealing with issues, Baltimore. I'm proud of that fact. I'm proud of the fact that the EPD has been doing good work and important work, and they've done it in a way that I feel is a benefit to the community. That said, there are still groups in the community that have that fear of the police department, and that's the work that we're doing so far, reaching out to the neighborhood community functions or meetings. I'd like to see more outreach to the people of color communities, the minority communities, the transponder community, LGBTQ communities that are often feel that they're singled out or focused on from the police department. And I think we're doing that. I'd just like to see us do more.
So, I mean, I think this is the unanimous number one is the use of force and de-escalation policy is, again, a really important one that we took up and I think was an important thing, especially from the Human Rights Commission standpoint, you know, how we de-escalate, how we interact with subjects, particularly those who have mental illness issues or other kinds of are in crisis, you know, especially in light of some high-profile incidents that have happened here in our community in the past few years. That was a major concern. And so seeing that taken seriously, and really the feedback given by the commission and how it was incorporated, I thought was really good. The code of conduct was another popular one. And then the other piece that I thought was really big was actually developing the stronger relationship between the commission, the mayor, and the city manager and council. I think that, you know, we're advisory to the police and they're very easy to find. They come to us, it's great. We're advisory to the city council as well, though, and we get two councilors who are oftentimes one or both are able to make it, but they're 2 out of 8. And there's also a mayor involved and a city manager who has even more latitude than the mayor and council on some of these issues. And so taking that concerted effort to engage, you know, we've done that as the HRC. It's been really helpful. And so seeing the police commission do that, I thought was a really good step in the right direction. In terms of challenges, some of these are for the commission, some of them, you know, as my last meeting, I'm just going to pontificate. But some of them I think will help for you, Chief, as well. You know, the first big one is downtown safety. You know, we are really at a crisis point, and I think that not just crisis in terms of what's going on downtown, but the amount of anger that's being felt by people who try to visit downtown and the businesses that are open. And, you know, in my professional life, I work for LTD, and we are large property owners in downtown, and the safety issues that happen there impact us on a regular basis as well. And that's, you know, there's also a component of homelessness and how we compassionately manage what we need to do to keep the streets safe and to keep downtown livable and welcoming to folks, while also not harassing the unhoused. But that said, there's a large number of non-unhoused people who are downtown causing trouble as well. And there are certain just blatantly illegal acts that should not be permitted to happen in our downtown area, which leads to the second piece, which is also funding. You know, as a commission, I think it's really, it was good to hear, Chief, you talk about we need to identify the values and outcomes as we as a community want to see the police able to develop or to deliver. I think as a commission, as that work's getting done, it's really incumbent on us to be advocates, not just to the mayor and the council, but out in the community to build support for that. I've lived in Eugene for about 5 years, and the first thing I noticed when I got here, one of the first things I was like, there's no cops here. Like I was like, it's great. Like I can go as fast as I want to on Coburg Road, and I'm never gonna get stopped. I don't, but I could sometimes. But you know, that said, I think that we're a community that likes to be safe, but we don't like to have law enforced. And I think that there's a complicated relationship between Eugene's old hippie roots and its very liberal beliefs, and how much they're willing to pay for law enforcement, in particular in terms of the national context. So we're privileged to understand how the agency works and its relationship with the community in a way many others don't. And so good luck. But please go forth and do that. And the final piece actually is building off of what Silver said. So at the Human Rights Commission, during the recruitment process that led to your hiring, we were approached not long before the 3 candidates arrived at the Human Rights Commission meeting by a number of advocates in the Latino community and the Latinx Alliance. They were very concerned that the outreach process that had been developed by the city did not include enough specific outreach to communities of color, and particularly the Latino community, that is uniquely affected by tensions between law enforcement and federal enforcement actions that are ongoing right now. And there was a feeling like the city didn't really care about what their opinions were and didn't make good outreach. And in some outreach that the commission has done over time, there were expressions, particularly again from the Latino community, of concerns about their relationships with the police and whether, and some of it are calls initiated by neighbors who see them being suspicious when they're just going to the park like a normal person, and other concerns of police response times not being as quick as maybe it would for their white neighbors. Irrespective of the truth of those beliefs, those were the beliefs that we had heard. And we've actually put together a report I'll be happy to share with you as well. But I think our commission should work on building those bridges in underrepresented communities. But I think a really important thing that you could do as well, Chief, and the city's Office of Human Rights and Neighborhood Involvement, I'm sure would be happy to help support that work, and I know that you've already been communicating with them on some issues. But that was something we heard a lot as a commission that I'd like to share back to here, is that figuring out ways to better build bridges in that community, and not just when something bad has happened or when you're trying to ask for something, but to routinely check in and have that relationship would be really great.
Thank you. So I had the same as what went around. I had the drone policy. I think it's a great start to having a model policy and a department that can be used as a model for other agencies to look at and to see what we're doing. The de-escalation policy, I thought I had a great conversation over a period of months on that one, and pretty proud of the work we've all done there. The public outreach and the city manager communications, city council, although just starting, I think we are off to a good start there. And I echo something that you just said, and that's it shouldn't take an event, a negative event, for anyone to feel valued or important, or that their voice is being heard. And I heard the same thing at a meeting that I was a party to. And it's stuck with me. So we're gonna work on that. Some things can't be controlled because of the staffing, but at least we'll get their voice out there. Challenges. There was a community justice study done, and it dovetails with some of the work that we have in our work plan here, and I kind of feel like we were left out of that and a lot of those discussions, and we also didn't reach out too, so we own a little bit of that. I feel that moving forward that there will be more studies and solutions coming forward, and I know with the new chief, there'll be new ideas, and I hope that we can be a part of that. And I agree with our counselor about potentially taking action in this budget cycle. The code of conduct, I thought, was a great policy that we worked with, and again, over a period of months to get that one recommended for approval. One area that came from the officers too, though, and I forgot what the name of the study was and what those groups were. It was it the strategy plan? What was that?
Redshift or Perf?
No, it was one that was about to go forward, and then with the director coming on, it was kind of put on hold because of they didn't know if it could go forward. What was that? It involved one of the things that involved was officer performance evaluations, and I think that one applies to the code of conduct. There were some things that came out. And those
Yeah,
were,
Redshift and Perf both touched on that topic.
Yeah.
And there was a study that was put out to the department, but that had some responses on that as well, like 54% response or something like that,
Right.
if that helps kind of jar memories.
And so if there's still inconsistencies there, I call that a challenge, because it's something that's in some of the policies, and is it effective? Is it consistent across for each officer? And are they getting their performance evaluated in a way that mentors them to do better and to feel good about what they're doing? The outreach thing, I believe we can still do better there, and we're going to continue to find groups that we can reach out to. We're going to work on the social media piece and also moving locations. I think the June meeting will be a great test to see how a different location impacts the attendance and community comments. Okay, I'll open up if there's any other additional comments from anything that you've heard or anything that you'd like to change that's currently on the work plan.
Last chance, I believe.
I know, right? I've dropped my bombs.
We still have work to do. Are there any changes or comments?
Well, I don't know if this is the time or not, or when it fits, but Jennifer's suggestion about making some sort of recommendation to the Budget Committee, I think if we're going to talk about resources and staffing, and we've all said that in one way or another, is certainly one of the challenges. We probably should draft something or get something in writing to, and since you're tied with the Budget Committee, you may have expertise we don't have about, we need a 10% increase, a 20%, I don't know, whatever is thought would be a good thing, we should get on the record with some sort of memo to the mayor of the Budget Committee.
There's a line here about downtown monitoring. When I first came on the commission, I tried to talk about, I did talk about the desirability of closed-circuit TV downtown. I mean, I understand that got shut down by the city council. I think it was by the city council. But there was also discussion that I had with the chief about the possibility of getting volunteers to work in a kind of observer role downtown in select places and at select times. They would not be intervening in anything, but just noting. And that would give us some pretty interesting raw data, I think, to argue for whatever it is we want downtown. But as far as I know, that didn't go anywhere. I don't know why, except there's obviously a number of difficulties, liability and otherwise. And I don't know if there's a ready bunch of volunteers to do that kind of thing. But it seems to me, in the absence of closed-circuit TV, and if that's shut, then I suppose that question could be asked again as well. Why not? But it seems to me that an observer corps of volunteers downtown could prove to be really eye-opening and helpful. That's a challenge.
Thank you.
Sure.
So what?
The CCTV policy and appendix that were approved probably a year and a half ago were revived and are being reviewed again, for potential attempts at trying to go down that road again. I'm not involved directly in it, but I did pass those documents along, and so it's being re-reviewed again to see if that's a
That's really good
potential
news,
option. So
in my opinion.
where that goes, I have no idea. But just so you know, since you asked if it was totally dead or not, it's been revived again to at least be looked at. And
I appreciate
and the work
that.
that the commission did at that time was saved. It was actually signed into policy. So we pulled that back out.
Excellent.
And
Happy
it's
to-
gone somewhere.
Happy to know that, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments, suggestions? All right, next on the agenda then, we're going to move into the kind of dovetails with the 2019 issues and policy priorities. Thoughts around what we need to be doing over the next year. When you look at our plan, any priorities there that we need to move up in the queue? Sounds like anything involving video might be a priority.
Are these listed in order of perceived priority, or are these just in order of, I don't remember how we put them in the work plan, or are they
These
just?
are just categories.
They were not listed by priority. That has been done historically, but in this case, it was just done by category.
So I might encourage that we look at the prohibited car camping program and effectiveness. I think that's a hot button issue in the community right now.
Yeah, that's good.
For food for thought, if you look at the back-to-back page, which is a memo, there's a list of policies that we've talked about at the planning meetings. The policies to re-review are policies, most of which I have recommended to Scott and Bill that the commission looks at. The others are just things that I've got on my radar that we're looking at. So any input you all might have on those, on what you actually would be interested or not. If there's something here that you're just not interested in, then feel free to say that too. So I don't want to waste your time here.
What's pepper bowl? That sounds fun.
I'm guessing it's not.
Do you like spicy food?
I do.
They are spicy. So pepper ball, it was a technology that we had probably 8 or 9 years ago. They shoot out of a paintball gun, and it's essentially a gelatin capsule like a paintball, but instead of having the marking paint inside, has a very, very, very fine powder, peppery powder. So it can be delivered from a distance to a very specific place to provide a very uncomfortable temporary substance into the air. So you can shoot 3 or 4 of them into the ground at somebody's feet or actually into somebody's chest. It gives a puff of very hot, spicy OC type symptoms, but then it clears up quickly, rapidly, and you can more effectively kind of target an individual. So if you've got somebody that's inciting a crowd that's causing a problem particularly. I'm not sure why we didn't continue with it. Lots of times stuff just kind of fade in and out as the people that are trained go on to do other things. In the aftermath of the public protests in the last year and a half, we started looking at standing back up a crowd control team because we really don't have one right now. And then we're looking at technologies that were available, and Pepperball was one of them. So we'd like to bring that back online as a potential tool, but part of the Pepperball policy and the way that's utilized really demands a review of the OC policy. And that has another longer story about being pretty restrictive when it comes to crowd control, probably too restrictive when it comes to crowd control. And so it seemed reasonable to me to ask your all's opinion about what you think about that. So with a metered, and I've got an idea of what I haven't written that one yet because it's pushed out or haven't made those adjustments, but a kind of a vision for what I'm picturing, and then I'll certainly vet it internally before it comes to the commission. But
Do you have numbers that show the effects of pepperball versus tasers or other non-lethal force methods?
how so?
Anything that
Comparison.
studies that are showing comparisons of?
Like from one to the other?
Mhm.
No, because they're
The-
really kind of just too different. They really aren't. They aren't things that you would utilize. They really cover totally different scenarios. Or pepper spray is a much more closer contact. You've got somebody squared off at you that's trying to fight you, or they're refusing to follow your commands, and there's a threat there. You could pepper spray them from a relatively short distance. Pepper ball is definitely where something that's going to be generally more crowd dispersal, SWAT could potentially use it if you've got a standoff with someone, and rather than having to get super close, you could make somebody pretty uncomfortable from a distance. It might persuade them to cooperate. And then the taser is more in line with the pepper spray type uses, but they really are just have different pros and cons for effectiveness. So it'd be hard to kind of pit one against the other, or they really are just very different.
So you think it would be an
tools.
additional tool, not
Yeah.
something as a,
It-
like, instead of?
The purpose of it really wouldn't replace anything. It's just another tool in order to try to have more options, in order to use the least invasive one, the one that impacts the fewest number of people. It's not painful, so unlike the 40 millimeter, the less lethal big sponge rounds that are purely pain compliance, they just hurt really bad. This is a tool that's not long-term painful, but has a similar kind of a reach, but they really are different effects. And so it really is just kind of it's just one more tool that would hopefully help us be more effective with minimal impact on the people that we're trying to deal with.
What is the digital thermometer policy?
We recently have implemented
Optometrists.
Yeah, they're just like the thermometer guns you can buy anywhere that put a laser out and then it tells you the temperature of that surface. And so we put them in all the patrol cars for assisting in investigations for distressed animals. So you get to a car and a dog's panting in the car. You can take a thermometer reading of the surface they're sitting on to be able to get an idea of what the actual temperature is inside. And it's a support item. And we've got a draft of it. We've moved forward with it because it's a pretty low impact item, but we do need to get the document written and pushed out, so.
I've seen, is it Captain or Sergeant Smith?
Sergeant Smith.
Sergeant, use that downtown at one point on a dog.
Yeah. Yeah, you can take a reading on the animal too to see what the animal's actual temperature is. And again, it's not scientific enough to be able to utilize that as your sole, but if you've got a panting dog that looks distressed and then you can back it up with some temperature readings, helps bolster the case.
If you were to prioritize these, where do you think it'd be?
Well, they're all important.
They're all.
None of these are urgently pressing. They're just of the policies to re-review. I think they're all they really are all important, and we could throw them up in the air. And if we got through all of them by the end of the year, that'd be fine with me. So there really isn't anything here that's uber pressing. The taser review is really, that policy was written 8 years ago, probably, at a time when taser issues were more complicated. And so that suggestion was a suggestion for me solely because the police commission was so involved at that time in writing that policy. To re-review it, it was long, it's complicated. And now that we have some familiarity and some comfort and some better knowledge around it, that maybe there'd be some ways that the commission would be okay with looking at it for simplification. So I don't have any particular, I wouldn't intend with that one to bring a new draft of whatever we wanted to push. It really would be more of a review of, is this still what we need? And is there a way that we could make it easier for officers to understand it, follow it, make it simpler? So that really is a re-review more for, does the commission want to request to make some changes, and what would that look like? Or is the commission okay with it as it is still? And then the restorative rest is another one. It's kind of a pet project that I've had that is controversial internally because everybody has differing opinions. So much of law enforcement, there's an expectation that you're not going to sleep on duty. Code of conduct say you shall not sleep on duty. Dereliction of duty. Does anybody here work graveyard? Graveyard is awful. It's terrible. I had weeks, so I did my first year as a sergeant, I was assigned to graveyard. And I had weeks between Wednesday morning and Sunday night where I legitimately slept 12 to 18 hours between Wednesday morning and Sunday night. I couldn't sleep. I was taking Benadryl and Ambien and melatonin, had my room darked out, a fan going, an AC unit to keep it cold. I'd still wake up at noon. It was terrible. And so Henderson, Nevada actually pushed out a pretty groundbreaking policy called restorative rest, where they allow officers one at a time with a supervisor's approval to use their lunch break as an opportunity to take a nap, turn their radio off, sit in a lounge chair, and actually get a legitimate nap. It's interesting, there's tons of studies from the nursing side on sleep deprivation and the effects of napping and the the benefits that you get. It's almost nothing from the police side. So here, it's internally, it's controversial. It's a little bit dead right now. We're going to talk about that one too, sir. You're just kidding. You're just hearing about this one. And so it really is. There's no big movement behind it. I am personally hoping that the police commission will like it and will help to kind of create some movement, because we don't always get the luxury of going home because we're sleepy. And we're not talking about somebody that legitimately is dangerous to be out. If that's the case, like, hey, Sarge, I'm dying here, I'm unsafe to be on the road, well then, we'll deal with that. But it's the people that really haven't slept very well, that had family commitments, that have to take their kid to school in the morning and they can't get to bed early enough. All the times where you're just sleepy, and it would be better for the public for you to be a little more rested. And so it's kind of splitting out those two and then creating a mechanism to be really different than any other police agency other than Henderson, Nevada, and kind of officializing that potential process. So that's what I'm hoping for. So there's a little back history on some of those. I didn't actually mean to talk so much about what the list was, but I think it'll help you all to kind of understand what we put on the agenda, and, or tentatively, and then to get some feedback on whether or not you think that would be beneficial for your time.
Do we have any information on Henderson? I mean,
I have their policy. It's worked well. It was actually came out in a Force Science Institute article where they were basically praising Henderson for the work that they had done. Their captain that wrote it and instituted it has been presenting at some conferences here and there. He was a super nice guy. I've talked to him a couple of times now.
Cool.
And he willingly, very happily sent me their policy. And I absolutely cherry-picked most of it. Replace Henderson with Eugene. Facility names with our facility names. I mean, why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to?
Could we get that?
Yeah.
Could you send that to us?
Yeah, the Henderson one?
Yours? Either?
Yeah.
Edward, you're next.
Yeah, now I have to remember what I was gonna say. I'll come back to it. I forgot to write it down.
Take a nap.
Yeah.
I think there's also an opportunity for some change in some policy reviews that maybe, changes that you had planned that we might have to come back and take a look at again. Are there any things that you would like to see the commission focus on?
Yeah,
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No, that's fine. And I mean, and there will absolutely, I appreciate Kyle's teeing up of the restorative arrest policy. And I don't know whether we've gone down this path or not, but I'd be interested to hear if we have policies surrounding what we used to call in Hillsborough as a safety clause for a certain amount of rest period between work periods and that type of thing. And I think oftentimes you have police officers that are asked to work graveyard and then train all day, or get called out on a mission and then work and then try and get 2 or 3 hours of sleep and then come back to work graveyard the next day without any reasonable amount of time in between their work shifts to get rest. And if we're talking about managing liability in the city, sleep deprivation is a huge risk for not only individual officer safety, but for city liability. And so I think when we talk about restorative, the type of conversation about restorative work performance, I think it can be a piece of this. It can be kind of a wellness conversation that we have around, whether it's restorative rest, whether it's, working out on duty, or the ability to, on a case-by-case basis, be able to get some exercise on duty and re-energize what you're doing, and make sure that we're not working our boys and girls, 15, 16 hours straight, and then expecting them with a 4-hour break to come back and work another 10-hour shift. So some of that stuff is really important to me. I think as early as Tuesday, there was great conversation at the Citizen Review Board around an issue that seemed to cause some confusion around whether or not an arrest was considered a seizure under Fourth Amendment. And I think that it was identified that maybe the policy was a little bit thin in explaining the difference between what people's concept of search and seizure is with regards to entering somebody's property and seizing property, or entering a vehicle and seizing property, and actual what is defined as a seizure under the Constitution, which is the stopping of a vehicle and/or a person, and/or taking or seizing a person. And so I think the CRB might actually forward a recommendation to take a look at that and see if maybe we can create, just with a small paragraph, some delineation between the two, or create some clarity around search and seizure, so that our paradigm isn't just simply thinking about serving search warrants and taking your stuff. that there actually is another seizure that happens hundreds of times a day between all these officers with every car stop that we make and every arrest we make, or every detainment that we have for a citation, that is considered a seizure, and being able to do that. So I think there's a few of these things that will come up, and as I start to kind of dig into making some changes, I do think it will drive some great policy discussions. I know that we are in, although we've been given a little bit of a break, I know that we are on pace for reaccreditation this fall, to be recognized for Oregon Accreditation Alliance reaccreditation this fall, and that I will be doing some work with Kyle on providing standards and signing off on practices that will help us meet that expectation. And I think part of our accreditation process, or the ease in which we get reaccredited, is largely in part to the good policies that come out of this group, that are industry standard defensible policies that make a lot of sense for not only for policing, but for policing in Eugene. And so we'll pay attention to that. So yeah, I'll look forward to add, undoubtedly with the brand new guy in town, there is going to be a shakeup of the way we do things, and it will undoubtedly put certain policies under a microscope as to whether or not it makes sense or not, and so those will come here. And and there'll be some that'll be no-brainers, but there may be some that really need the exposure, the external public-facing exposure that this group gives those. And I think instead of bringing everything here, we pick those ones that are really important to make sure that they get that public exposure and that thoughtful conversation before we implement those. And so we'll take a look at how we can do that. So.
I remembered.
All right.
Yeah.
Do we know when we're going to get the first round of stops data?
Census.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Lieutenant Census would have that answer.
So that might be something to put on the radar for the next fiscal year, is if we've got stops data that's starting to come in, that would be definitely.
And that came up with the Citizen Review Board. I think that was the training topic, wasn't it? The Lieutenant Tinseth came in and did kind of an overview of what they're collecting, how they're collecting it, and was happy to see that we've got between 98 and 100% participation in what we're doing, and so you're going to have great data. I think my expectation and what my desire will be is that we will each year have kind of an annual report on that and be able to do that. And so this group could be a part of our traveling roadshow when it comes to delivering that stop data, because we started this we started this in Hillsborough back in 1999-2000 as a result of seeing what was going on in downtown Portland. And the chief at the time, Ron Louie, who had enough foresight to recognize, hey, this train's coming. And we got ahead of it pretty quick through our CAD system and did that. But it was important for us as an organization back then, and I think it is now, is to periodically take a look and see what it's telling us, and see whether or not it's telling us that stops, and more importantly, stops and searches are happening in a disproportionate amount to the community we're serving. And luckily for us in Hillsborough, we were a fairly just and reliable organization, and it was very consistent, with maybe a few little areas that we needed to talk about. But it would be my expectation that we review that and see what information we can glean from that, and maybe what the story is telling, and be able to report out on that with an annual report type of format with that stop data.
Kind of build on top of that, sure, too. I would also suggest that perhaps a discussion about and this is also Lieutenant Tinseth, this hate and bias crimes reporting and what's going on here. There's a fairly steady trend of increase in both the hate and bias incidents and also hate and bias crimes that have been happening. We get at all of our monthly meetings, or we get a quarterly report from EPD where they come and share what's going on. And actually, that might be Sergeant Banshee now. But anyway, so it's really useful, but I think it's an important thing where the HRC is talking about it and they're pushing on council. But I think it'd be good on the police commission side too, just to get an update on what's going on and learn about the work that EPD is doing to respond to that and to build in those communities.
Thoughts? Okay. So we will take some of these back and we'll Sergeant Williams on getting them plugged into the 2019 plan and also continuing to finish this plan. The challenges, the things that we're most proud of, we have a report due to the City Council by July. I don't know if we're going to present it or if we're just going to send it in. It's usually every other year we've been going in person to do that, but we're going to take a look and see if we can get on the calendar this year as well and present it in person. I guess we're going to finish with the, I don't want to let your comment just float there. I don't know what would be appropriate at this time and whether or not we have enough information to even propose some sort of letter or draft, but we do have the 3 meetings coming up for the Budget Committee with the public comments, and I think there's a great opportunity there. And then I'll do my due diligence to send Jeremy for the packets on Friday, the updates as the meetings take place so that you're involved there. I'll also do some exploring on the procedure for what might look if we wanted to do a letter and get that out to everyone as well. I don't know what that looks like just yet. Do you know?
No.
Okay, let's finish with the closing comments.
Oh, we gotta start with opening comments and close. I just want to thank everyone who's been here on the commission for these. I've been here for, I think it's been 2 years. This has really been a very rewarding experience. It's an honor to be been part of helping to shape some of the policies here. I'm certain we will get you a worthy replacement from the Human Rights Commission. We've got a lot of really bright, talented folks. But thank you for the chance to be part of this and for taking all of my ample input. I've enjoyed my time, and I look forward to the good work you guys have ahead of you. And welcome, Chief. I know our commission is excited to see you join.
No comment?
Well, thanks, Edward.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to have you on board. I finally feel like I'm getting my feet under me as to what we're going to be doing. So I'm happy we talked about it.
And good luck.
Thank you.
Whatever comes your way.
Yeah, I'll still be here in town. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, good.
Yeah, thanks for your time on the board. It's helpful when everybody is talkative and provides input, and you certainly did that. So it is helpful for me in the work that we're doing upstairs to try to craft these policies and procedures to make sense for everybody. So it is appreciated. Thank you. I think you've used up the rest of my time already.
Thank you, Edward. And I hope you find another place to serve somewhere in the city, because I find your thoughts very thorough and well articulated. One thing, if Claire and I bring things to council, but it would be helpful if you guys have something in particular that you think needs to be brought. Please share it at some point, because what we decide is important might not be what everyone on the commission thinks is the most important thing to bring. I mean, we obviously have. When we're trying to figure that out, we're making certain assumptions. So it might be helpful at some point during the meeting to just decide what you want us to do. I'm happy to bring back what folks find important, even if it's not the thing that I got the most out of. So
I've enjoyed your presence here. You are indeed, what did you say? Smart and talented?
I didn't say that.
Well, you've spoken to other people. I mean, you're just another one that's smart and talented, I think. I really have enjoyed especially the kind of detail that you've come up with when we discuss policies. I really enjoyed it. So, best wishes.
Thanks.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you for a great meeting. I mean, we didn't get a chance to cross over much, but I'm accessible to you for anything that you need and any discussions we need to have. And certainly you'll learn that my personality is one that likes to be engaged and relational. And so I think that's a big part of why I'm sitting in this seat. And so we'll continue that. I appreciate the commission's desire to advocate on behalf of your community with regards to its public safety initiative. I would encourage you, whatever that looks like at the Budget Committee to stay focused on outcomes, on the things that you think you'd like to see, and leave it to us to figure out operationally how we do that. But to be able to speak generally that we'd like to see a safer downtown. We'd like to see police officers in the neighborhoods more. We'd like to see all of our calls for service handled even on our busiest days. Those are kind of outcomes that we can build upon. That gives me an opportunity with very bright people that I have in this organization to come up with a strategy and a financial package to be able to do those things. I think that's a great approach for this commission, is to declare the types of outcomes they'd like to see in their community, and then we will work our tails off to try and get there. So.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to, and I'd like to see, as we have the chief's report, maybe we could work as a team to decide what we want to see in the future. So Director James, I think, had us on a great path of kind of understanding what the problems were. But, you know, what does the future look like? So I think as you think about that too, please forward those up to Jeremy and CC everybody so we can see those. And that'll help our new chief give us the data that we're looking for as well, so that when we're looking at policies, we can make the right input. If you are out and about in the community and you're meeting with an association or a group of folks talking about the police commission, make sure you're sending that information in to me or Jeremy or whoever, so we can track. We're making great progress towards the 100% contact, at least with the neighborhood associations, and we're making some contact outside of the neighborhood associations, but that will be a piece that will be key, I think, coming up in the next year. So with that,
Who was taking the transponder meeting? It looked like there was a transponder meeting coming up.
I'll visit with you.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments? All right, give the time. We're adjourned.
Can I snag you for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's passed, I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
I'm out. No, this is HRC, so.